Some progress with a little Overtype engine. Now unfortunately here in the UK it's November 2023 and we've entered our monsoon season, so it pretty much rains every bloody day at the moment, so opportunities to get out and paint don't happen very often. However, I have managed to get the base and the flywheel etch primed, so they just need to have the final coat on them now. The Firebox has been vinegar bathed and cleaned up on the wire wheel, and that's ready for its high temperature engine paint, but again, raining, so can't do that at the moment. I've knocked up a little chimney for it, which I've got no idea, you know, what size the original chimney was, but that, I think that looks okay on the boiler. Let's see if we can pop it on. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. I think that looks all right. You know, I'm guessing obviously on the size, but I think that's okay. Boiler's interesting construction. It looks like it's a rolled sheet and someone has done a lap joint on the bottom there, but yeah, it's watertight, so and it cleaned up okay. Little tiny dent in it, but other than that, nothing wrong with that at all. The safety valve was a pain. When I attempted to get the inner part out, the rod that the little this little round nut was on just sheared off. Someone had used a steel screw for the inner part of the safety valve and it just rusted away. I was able to tap it out and save the outer part, so I've just basically, with the safety valve, I've just made a new inner, and it all functions fine, so that should be all right. So yeah, pretty much there. Like I said, just the final bit of paint to do, and that's all dependent on the weather, unfortunately. But once I've got the base, flywheel and the Firebox done, we can put it all back together. So we are getting there. Well, the rain let up just long enough for me to get outside and do a bit of painting, so I've managed to get the painting all finished on this now. The Paxton base polished up quite nicely, just used a bit of metal polish on that and it came up quite nice. So it's now time to put it all back together and hopefully get it running. Well, it went back together fine. I've changed out the screws. It originally used countersunk 6BA screws, and there aren't any countersunk holes on here, so I've changed them out for hex head screws, and I think it looks a lot better because of that. And I've put shortened brass 4BA screws into the base. So yeah, it looks lovely. I think the chimney's okay, you know, it's right about in the right proportion. So yeah, so yes, it looks great, but will it run? Well, that's going to be the next step. We'll get it. I'll get my little Bix burner in there, get some water in the tank, and we'll see whether it actually runs. Full disclosure, this will be the second time that I've steamed this engine. Now, the first time I steamed it, it ran absolutely fine, and I did video it, so I'll put a short clip up in a minute of it running that first time. But I had forgotten that when I disassembled this, the Firebox was actually soldered to the base plate. Now, when I put it back together, obviously I did not solder the Firebox to the base plate. And the problem with that is it's only then fixed. It was only then fixed at this one point here where the Firebox is bolted to the strap. And these side straps, which hold the frame and everything, they weren't really tight around the boiler. So when it ran, the whole thing was shaking and wobbling. The boiler and the Firebox, absolutely everything. Shaking all over the place. So I thought, right, I'm going to do something about that. This needs to be sorted out before I run it again. So I'll show you what I did. And behind this screw, on the other side of the Firebox wall, there is a 1/2 inch cube of brass, which I drilled and tapped 6BA in this direction and in that direction. So basically it's bolted to the back end of the Firebox there, and from the underside there is a bolt coming up which bolts the cube down onto the base plate. So the Firebox is now fixed to the base plate, at least at this one point here. So that's all helped with the rigidity. And the other thing I did was I added this spacer bar, and what this allows me to do is it allows me to tighten these screws up, which pinch these two brass brackets in around the boiler. So now the boiler is rigidly fixed. It held properly down onto the firebox, which it wasn't before. So hopefully that will make the whole thing a lot more rigid and it will run without flapping around. So I'll put a very brief clip of it running before I did all of this up now. Well, we've got steam coming out the safety valve. Yes, look at that, lovely. The other thing I've done, I put about 120, 150 millilitres of water in it the first time, and there was water pouring out all over the place. So I've just put about 100 millilitres of water in it this time, and it's not quite as wet as it was. But no, it runs superbly and very quiet. Obviously there's no regulator, so the only way I can control this is by the gas, and I've got the gas right down at the moment. No, it runs superbly. And obviously my mods have had the required effect, because the firebox and the boiler are not moving around at all, which is what I hoped for. Well, runs a treat. Well pleased with that. I decided not to put a pipe from the exhaust to the chimney because I don't think there was one originally. There was no indication there was ever a pipe soldered to the exhaust port, so there's just a hole below the steam feed pipe for the exhaust. What a lovely little Overtype. It's really nice. I've always had a fondness for Overtype steam engines. It's the same with beam engines. I can't really give you a good reason, but I just quite like Overtypes, and I like beam engines as well. Not that I've got very many of those, but no. Safety valve appears to be working okay. It was letting off a little bit just before I started the engine up, so yeah, well pleased with that. I also think the chimney looks okay. I don't think it's out of proportion. But yeah, it obviously doesn't need much. I mean, the steam pipe does go directly into the top of the boiler, so you are going to get priming if you put too much water in there. So, as I said, this was just over 100 millilitres. It's probably about right, because we're not getting too much spray coming out of it, which is good. It's running a treat. Very low gas flame. I don't know whether you can see that, but that's just barely a light. So, no, superb. Well pleased with that. Still really not sure whether this is a commercial engine or a homemade one. I actually think that the boiler end caps have been silver soldered, which is nice, but not really necessary for a small model engine of this size. Runs on very, very low pressure steam. No, lovely. Let's move this around a bit. Lovely, lovely little engine. Well, I think that'll do really. Let's turn the gas off. I don't want to run it for too long because, like I said, there was actually very little water in the boiler, and I don't want to run it dry. Okay, there you go. I think, as I said, that'll do for the little unknown, but I'm sure very definitely British Overtype model steam engine. As always, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.